Now, days after the United States confirmed it had killed the leader of Alshabab, the group has retaliated just like it said it would. A suicide car bomber has killed 12 people in an attack aimed at African Union troops in Somalia, and those who survived were rushed to hospital in Mogadishu. The local governor confirmed that a car laden with explosives was rammed into an AU convoy traveling southwest of the capital. This attack is in line with what international experts predicted when they said Godane's death would provide even more problems for the West.
It seems from all indications the United States has been on Godane's trail for roughly 2 years. Following his membership of Al-Shabaab in 2007, he had in a video offered his services to Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden, apparently in response to a bin Laden message in March 2009 in which he urged the Somali government to overthrow the newly elected president of Somalia, Sharif Ahmed. And in January 2010, he released a statement reiterating his support for Al-Qaeda and that Al-Shabaab will join the international jihad of Al-Qaeda. The US in 2012 put a $7 million bounty on his head. Friday's announcement is regarded a major victory for the US, which had fulfilled a similar promise when Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden was killed on May 2, 2011. A statement from the White House said, Godane's removal is a major symbolic and operational loss to the largest Al-Qaeda affiliate in Africa and reflects years of painstaking work by our intelligence, military and law enforcement professionals. While not diminishing the danger posed by any group affiliated with Al-Qaeda, a threat to the West, Professor Femi Adegbolu of Redeemers University calls for caution when striking leaders of such groups.
Without good governance, giving the people a sense of belonging, we still will not get there because they will still be looking at their leaders as oppressors. Where you don't have respect for the rule of law, you don't respect the lives of the people, whether they live or die, you are not careful about it. So long as the members of your own parochial family are doing well. So that's exactly what is breeding all this insurgency.
Other analysts have suggested that had host countries attacked the groups from the onset, their growth and influence would have been checked.
Police, military, navy cannot garrison Nigeria. Therefore, the Boko Haram can decide to hit this village. As you are rushing your troops there, they pull out, then they go and hit you somewhere else. And then you pull the troops and you are rushing after them again. So they have the advantage. A guerrilla war, because this is really more like guerrilla warfare. A guerrilla movement has the advantage of where to hit. You can only react. So what I would expect the government to do, frankly, is to do what we did at the beginning of the Civil War. You just admit you don't have enough men under arms and you're going for massive recruitment.
Despite the extent of its reign of terror, Al-Shabaab does not fall on the list of the world's richest terror organizations, according to a report in National Money. Hence, its influence might continue to be limited to the Somali region. Lashing on to bigger and richer groups as Al-Qaeda could be the only way it continues to maintain relevance.
Okay, we move on to another story, which is actually a very good one. At a research facility in Oromia, one of Ethiopia's 3 most populous states, a group of researchers take visitors on a tour of one of their grain fields. The East African country has started local seed banks to enable farmers to enhance food security.
3 decades after the famine that killed more than 1 million people in Ethiopia and shocked the world into belated action, the country's scientists and farmers are taking the fight against climate change and food insecurity down to the ground. The famine was a product of both natural and human causes, but scientists here say that even at the time of the crisis, they had identified a lack of multiple seed varieties adapted to changing weather conditions as a major factor in the failure of crops. One of the lessons learned from the famine was that farmers needed more information and greater variety in the seeds they sow to cope with the effects of climate change. For instance, different varieties of sorghum could be planted at different times of the year to lessen the impact of climate variability. There are now 18 seed banks spread across Ethiopia's Oromia, Amhara, and southern regions. Hatamida is the National Wheat and Sorghum Research Coordinator.
We give them training, how to produce. For example, this is a hybrid seed and it requires some precaution. And so we give training to them. So basically, the things we provide to these private seed companies, training, enhancing their capacity to produce seeds, and also initial seeds.
Ato Mekonnen runs a farm that produces hybrid maize, wheat, haricot beans, and teff seeds, which he supplies to local farmers. The farm is fully mechanized and uses new technology. Mekonnen received funding for his project from the Alliance for a Green Revolution Africa, AGRA, an independent, Africa-based and African-led organization working with small-scale farmers across the continent.
The demand is so huge, but the supply is limited because there are no many seed companies who are capable to produce quality seed for maize, wheat, beans, and other cereal crops. So there is a very big gap between demand and supply.
African ministers and business leaders are meeting in Addis Ababa for the African Green Revolution Forum. The 4-day conference will look at ways the continent can scale up its agricultural productivity and develop its economic growth.
We must end the era of prodigal economics, where Africa ignores its own agricultural potential and turns itself into a net food importing region, spending a whopping $35 billion annually on food imports. Yet, 65% of all the available arable land that will feed 9 billion people in our world by 2050. It's not in Latin America, it's not in Asia, it's not in Europe, it lies right here in Africa.
Associate Program Director for the Program for African Seed System, PASS, Dr. George Begowa, believes one of the solutions is to focus on helping small-scale farmers increase their output.
If you look at the multinationals, they only focus on particular crops like maize, and yet in Africa, our farmers grow a wide range of crops. So it is these small seed companies or local seed companies who are interested in producing seed of those other varieties which the multinationals don't touch.
Ethiopia's seed bank beneficiaries are some of the success stories. Obo Gobena has been in business for the last 5 years. Like Ato Mekonnen, he also sells seed to local farmers. He started a store where he packages seed in bags as small as 2 to 5 kilograms.
Ethiopia is having about 84 million and above. So we have to have so many interested seed growers, private dealers like me to reach every corner.
In less than a decade, Ethiopia had emerged from a famine-ravaged economy to becoming the 5th largest in Africa, bigger than neighboring Kenya that had dominated the region for years. Growth has been driven by an expansion in services and agriculture.
Well, after the break, we see how one man uses his creativity to turn this tragedy into an opportunity. Welcome back. This is Network Africa on Channels Television. Now, just before we call it today, September the 21st will make it exactly 1 year since the Kenya Westgate Mall attack took place, in which 67 people were killed, including the attackers. The grueling incident lasted for 3 days, and the Islamist group Alshabab claimed responsibility for the attack, which it characterized as retribution for the Kenyan military's deployment in Somalia. Anyway, since it's not September the 21st just yet, you've probably already figured out that we're looking at another perspective to this tragedy. Here's what it is.
I told the lady that there's someone who's coming because I could see the reflection of someone coming.
Nearly 1 year after the siege of Westgate Mall in Nairobi, filmmaker Dan Reed is telling the story of the survivors and first responders in a new film documentary, Terror at the Mall.
I think it's very important that as a documentarian, I can tell the story from the inside. I can tell it through people's experience. I can tell it more accurately than any media is able to do at the time, because I have a long time and I have more resources to analyze what happened. And I think it's important for us in our culture of media where often events are covered so quickly, so fleetingly, in such haste, they're covered on Twitter, that there's an increasing kind of casualization. I think really in-depth reporting and the in-depth analysis and of what happened is becoming more important because of the casualization of news.
67 people were killed when Somali Alshabab militants raided the upmarket shopping center on September 21st, 2013, hurling grenades and spraying bullets at shoppers in retaliation for Kenya sending troops to Somalia. Reid, who also directed and produced Terror in Mumbai in 2009 and Terror in Moscow in 2003, said this film provided a unique challenge.
The challenge with this film was to find the people in the security camera footage. So we sifted through thousands of hours, many angles, and began to see developing stories, began to be able to follow what happened to this person hour after hour. And then we wanted to find those people, to find the people in the footage. And so we set out in Nairobi, huge city, millions of people, to try and identify people that we often couldn't see very clearly.
Officials say as few as 4 gunmen may have carried out the attack, down from initial government estimates of 10 to 15, leaving many Kenyans questioning how such a small group could have held off hundreds of elite soldiers for 3 days. One of the subjects in the film told her story of survival after coming face to face with the attackers.
The terrorist that's in the middle and the front looks at us, sees the baby peering around, and turns his head to the side and kind of cocks his head and makes this cute baby face and goes, and waves at me and waves at the baby. And I just remember thinking, if they see my face now, they're gonna know how crazy I think this is. Like, I can't believe what just happened. They're killing women and children, and they're making baby faces at us and waving.
It was a really strange physical force, and I found out later that I was shot in my left leg. It entered in my left leg and it came out by my right hip. My main concern at that point was to just make sure that my kids didn't see anything, so just to try and get them to keep their faces down. So I was sort of holding their faces down, saying, "Don't look up, don't look up."
Reid combed through several hours of footage to make the movie and also used still photographs from news media who reported the attack.
The pictures, I realized that he shot bursts of pictures. And when I played through the pictures one by one, and when I played through them quickly, they looked to me like they created video, they created a sense of motion, a sense of being there, which really, I mean, that blew me away as a filmmaker. I realized these incredibly rich, evocative pictures were actually sequences that could move.
The attack is the worst on Kenya's soil since Al-Qaeda bombed the US Embassy in Nairobi in 1998, killing more than 200 people. For Reid, being so close to the material has been heartbreaking.
It's kind of, I feel it's, a part of me has really been touched by being in contact with the material. And I don't know how many times I can do that. You know, you've got to be able to bounce back from every film. Clearly, I don't experience anything like what the victims experience, but it's a second-hand relationship to the event. But it does affect you because you're in such intimate contact with the material, and you're contemplating it hour after hour after hour during the editing process. And it's really got to me this time, more than the other films that I've made.
The HBO documentary film, Terror at the Mall, will debut September 15 on HBO in the United States.
And that's how we draw the curtains on this episode of Network Africa. Many thanks for watching. I'm Cynthia Are. As always, I'd love to hear from you, so feel free to send me an SMS via the number on your screen. Until next time, stay blessed and proudly African. I'm Cynthia Are. Bye for now.
A time comes in the life of every race when people are driven by echoes of the past to chart a course for an exalted future. Africa is a blessed threshold. As major actors in the Africa arena plots a renaissance towards common destiny, let's pedal across the streams of yesterday, from the backstreets of Africa to the defining roles of policymakers, the political realities of the African nation, balance of power, and the strive to sustain national interest and identity. Join us on Network Africa on Channels Television. Network Africa, a rallying point for the masses.